Ladies and gentlemen, it is ROCKtober on the Big Dumb Fun Show. We tried to come up with a very cliche thing to do, and we're like, what kind of show are we? Well, we're definitely not going to be cliche and have like a ROCKtober. And they're like, hell, why not? It's ROCKtober. It's been there for a couple of years now. We've been doing it, and our next guest we actually met up with at the Westport Coffee House not too long ago. Gnurk and I we were sitting there
just kind of having a pre-show meeting,
sipping a latte,
with your pinky up.
Exactly, pinkies up. We're fancy pants like that, and just jabbing about some bands coming in. Calvin came up and he's like, "Hey, you guys, we kind of have the same friends going on here. Like we kind of have some of the same interests." Turns out this guy's got a radio show.
Say what?
On KKFI, and it's just a perfect fit for ROCKtober. And Calvin, thank you very much tonight for coming on the Big Dumb Fun Show. Glad to have
Calvin.
you.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for having me. And I did go through the stop, drop, and roll fire drills outside, and also the civil defense drills. I'm not sure if that's standard procedure for all the guests.
Yeah,
but,
I read that you were really getting pumped up for the show.
Yeah,
you really wanted to make a good performance.
So I'm ready. I worked out with the shake weight earlier today.
Nice. That's what Gnurk calls it too. So,
well, it's as big as a shake weight.
Sure it is. How
about the Bowflex?
No, I don't call it a Bowflex. Oh, you meant Calvin.
Meant what?
Sorry.
All right. So tell us a little bit about. Now we were talking to you, and you're like, oh yeah, we talked about a couple of different bands that we've had interviews with. You've had interviews with. Your show, it's on every week. It's every Tuesday night. Starts at midnight. On KKFI here locally in Kansas City. It goes till 5 a.m. And so I would tell everyone it's a morning show.
Yeah, I call it Tuesday overnight into Wednesday morning.
Yeah,
and that way sometimes people get confused and they want to tune in at midnight Wednesday night into Thursday morning. They get something totally different. I turned on, you weren't on there. I'm like, no. Tuesday overnight into Wednesday morning, midnight to 5 a.m.
Yeah. Now, and this is Kansas City's community radio station.
Yes.
Which and one of the weird things, which you would either hate or you would love, is the eclectic type of music that you can hear on KKFI. It could be classical. It could be whatever the person in the studio wants to play. That is the new format to the show. When you're on there, it's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll, but it is very eclectic within itself, and there is some variation depending on who's there. I do the show twice a month. My main partner, Night Prowler Chuck Cannon, does the show twice a month. We also have a few other guys who come in and help out some, and we let them play some sets. Although they're not technically certified programmers for the show, we let them participate. When I'm there...
Because there's some training you have to go through.
Exactly. You have to go through training, get certified, because we do all our own engineering. We have to know the FCC regulations, the station policies, all of that. And...
like where to put the station ID and
those kinds of things.
You have to do
You actually have to have kind of a license.
We don't have to have a license anymore. In the old days, we did. My dad still has an FCC license. He was from back in the old days when just to do any kind of radio show, you had to have an FCC.
Do you have to do transmitter
license.
readings?
Yes.
I used to have to do that at my old radio gig in Butler. Go into the transmitter room, and like every quarter hour, you had to go in there and just take all these, make sure that you were broadcasting at so many kilowatts and
you
gigawatts.
guys are totally showing your age right now.
We do tower readings, but they're very easy now. All I do, I can even do it from my cell phone.
What?
You can call it in. Yeah.
I call it in, and I punch in a few codes and write down what it tells me. And basically, you're just making sure that it has enough power. Since we're on after dark, there's also a reading to make sure that the actual tower lights are bright enough so that an airplane doesn't crash into it if there's some problem and it's not
You know what? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
If you have a tower over 200 feet, you have to have a blinking light on top so planes don't hit it.
Wow.
And at my Butler station, our tower was 199 feet. So they didn't have to mess with that because you have to now hire a guy to climb up the tower and all this junk.
Because planes never fly lower than 200 feet.
Well,
hey, I
think
caught the
they're not
landing
supposed
gear.
to.
That's not my fault.
Whoops!
It's his altimeter.
I think
So,
it should
now,
be.
Maybe
Here's
that's
the thing.
what happened to JFK Jr.
Yeah, it could be.
He didn't hit KKFI's tower.
Well, we know that.
I'm
guys
just
are
thinking of
90
airplane where
90
disco lives forever.
90.1 on the FM
Yes.
dial. This is a 50,000 watts.
100,000
It's a
watts.
100,000 watts. You got like a 90-mile radius for a throw.
And it's been there since 1988. Studio locations have moved around over the years, but they've always been around Midtown or downtown. Currently, it's at 39th and Main, the Great American Bank building.
Yeah, it's just right down the street.
Yeah.
Now, on your show, though, how long is the show, which is the High Voltage Rock and Roll Radio Show? It's on Facebook. You can go to our Facebook page and pull up the link to it. You want to like this show, you'll get to hear like the playlist, a preview, and a recap of each show. But how long has the show been on KKFI?
The actual, under the name High Voltage, only goes back to spring of 2011, March of 2011. Before that, there was a show in the very same time slot, same night and morning, called The Rocker, which originated in April of 1999. And that was hosted by Kurt Mason. That was his nickname, The Rocker, after the Thin Lizzy song, which was his main band. And Kurt was a very close friend of mine for many years, and all of us who do the show now, the High Voltage show. Kurt passed away in October of 2010, very unexpectedly. And the transition from the Rocker to High Voltage Rock and Roll Radio Show took place between October of 2010 and March of 2011. At Kurt's funeral, a couple of other KKFI programmers, RJ and Storm and Norman, approached me and Travis, who helps me with some of the music on the show. Also Anarchy Al, who's been helping out, who's moving to California now, so he's leaving for another part of the country this month. But we were approached by RJ and Storm and Norman, and
after Kurt died,
actually at his funeral, and they said,
wow, he would have wanted it this way.
Yeah, I mean, he was like they basically were filling in for him immediately after he passed away, and they said, "You guys want to bring some music down next week?" Yeah, and you want
that was the birth of now what you do now. That was the start of your
and we just started coming down every week, and they started training us on the spot, and then we went through the formal training and certification.
All right. Well, when we come back, we'll talk about what you can find on the show right now, the bands you've interviewed, good interviews, bad interviews, and what's coming up next on the High Voltage Rock and Roll Radio Show. It's Rocktober. We have Calvin Cotton in studio. We'll talk more with him next on the Big Dumb Fun Show.
Mm-hmm.